Don't focus on issues.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Online, we still have some good audio going here, going strong. Yep. All right. Thanks, Earl. Hope you're doing well. Welcome back, everyone. I am here to introduce to you the woman who needs no introductions, because I will not say it correctly anyways. We have, if you don't know her, you should. That's the introduction I'm going to give you.
Great.
If you don't know,
See a kinship.
yeah. If you don't know her, you should come meet her at Kinship. This is Chris DuSell, co-steward of our Kinship Circle, a very important part of our Sangha, as you all know. So excited to have her here speaking this morning. The title of this morning's talk is "It Is All Practice."
Thank you. Thanks. Can everybody hear me online, or do I need to move it closer? Can you hear me? No, because I don't have the microphone on. Okay, how about now? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great. When I was sitting this morning, I don't know at what point, it was after the walking meditation, I had that experience where my body just settled, and it felt so wonderful to be sitting with all of you. And what came up for me is gratitude. So much gratitude for this place, for Roshi Robert and Roshi June, and for everyone who volunteers in some capacity here at the center. And as I look out here in the room and online, so many do something. Even just showing up to sit with us, with each other, is such an important thing. And I am so grateful for this place and this practice and all of you. So I wanted to start by saying that. So as those of you who give Sunday morning Zen talks know, you're asked to give a title way before you have any idea what your topic is going to be. And so I went with It's All Practice because it seemed like I could talk about anything. And so I am going to talk about some practice today, but I think it's interesting to say that I was on vacation recently. I got back this past Tuesday, and before I went on vacation, I wanted to get my talk done because I didn't want it hanging over my head while I was on vacation that I was going to have to draft this right away when I got back. So I did. I got it 85% there, and I knew I would have a little last minute stuff to do. But I came back and I was like, that's just not the talk. It's just not where my head is at right now. It's just not resonating for me. And so I said, now I have a talk that's 85% done for the next one, and maybe it'll resonate. But what was really resonating for me is something that occurred to me on vacation. And first off, I was on vacation in Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. So everybody can go, oh. And it was stunning, as it always is. This was not my first time. And there is nothing like immersing yourself in nature like that to be renewed in some way. But what I noticed on vacation is that I had a lot of humming in my chest. I had a hard time sleeping. And I could have chalked that up to I'm not in my normal bed. Travel can sometimes activate you. There's bears. I mean, when you go on a hike out there, the trailhead has big signs, be bear prepared. Do you have your bear spray? That's a little anxiety producing. We were fortunate enough for years I've wanted to do this scenic highway that's at the northeast corner, just outside of the park, Yellowstone Park, called the Beartooth Highway, Scenic Highway. And we got to do it this year, and I read too much online about how it's scary, so I was a little anxious about that. And there are parts of it that are pretty exposed. Ungo, you're shaking your head. You must have been on this one before. Yeah. But it's gorgeous, absolutely stunning. So I was thinking, well, maybe all of this is what's making me sort of not be able to sleep at night. But it didn't feel like that. It just felt like this low-level, chronic anxiety. And when I was laying in bed, it wasn't like it was attached to a thought. It wasn't attached to a particular anxiety. And so I just noticed it and worked, I just tried to let it be. And I noticed how my mind would say, is it about this? Or maybe it's about this. Like I was trying to hang it on something. Because if I could hang it on something, then maybe I could fix it. Maybe I could fix it. I could come up with some sort of solution. So anyway, that's where my mind and body, I should say my body has been, because it really was a body experience more than a mind experience. And I decided to sort of return to a teaching that I learned years and years and years ago from Pema Chodron in her book, Living Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change. And, Pema is actually a Tibetan Buddhist. We're Zen, so she's a little different, but we dip as is useful to us. And this book is really about what I assume to be 3 Tibetan commitments. A vow for personal liberation, the Bodhisattva vow, which we practice, and something called the Samaya vow, a resolve to embrace the whole world just as it is without bias. So that's the bulk of the book, probably, that much. This first 22 pages is what I'm going to talk about, and was really impactful to me many years ago. She sets up the book by talking about the fundamental ambiguity or the fundamental uncertainty of the human experience. As humans, we share the tendency to like certainty, to like solid ground, and in particular, in difficult or stressful times, we strongly seek it. Something predictable and stable that we can stand on. And in fact, many things do seem certain, predictable in our lives, and that's useful. We know if we're working, most of the times we know we have a job to go to the next day. That's not so certain anymore these days either. We know that, we're going to wake up in the same apartment or house or whatever. There's a lot of things that are stable in our lives. But in working with this concept, Chodron is talking about the sort of chronic or habitual ways in which we can look for the thing we can do or not do that will get us to that okay state, where life feels comfortable and everything is okay. It's manifested in the thinking that says, as soon as I get this degree, everything will be okay. As soon as I get this job, everything will be okay. As soon as I lose this weight, as soon as I find a partner, as soon as whatever, then I can finally, now it's smooth sailing. And we do this all day long, all life long, constantly looking ahead of us for when that time comes, when everything will be okay. We say to ourselves, because I don't have this job or this relationship or this thing, whatever it is, I feel unsettled, uncomfortable, edgy. I don't have that sense of okayness. It's a desire to get to a state of persistent security, persistent well-being, persistent okayness. Children says we operate, quote, under the illusion, it's an important word, under the illusion that experiencing constant security and well-being is an ideal state. She says that's an illusion. And we expend enormous energy trying to orchestrate our lives just so that we'll arrive at this place that we believe is possible and that we believe others have already, that we believe is the way life is supposed to be. As if when we achieved this state, it would hold or endure, when in fact we already have plenty in our life experience that tells us that life is change, it's impermanent. Whether a particular state is good or whether a particular state is uncomfortable, it will change. So I don't know about you, but these times we're living in can be difficult and stressful. Would you agree? And here's what I was remembering. Anxiety is contagious. Not just between people, which it is, but also within myself. So the anxiety I experience from one thing carries over into other areas of my life as well. I might be anxious about a headline I read and then carry that energy into an interaction with my husband or friend or partner, family member, friend. Or I can take that same anxious energy from reading that headline and take it into thinking about my to-do list and just ramp myself up about what I've got to do and get overwhelmed because I've brought this particular anxiety energy into it. There is no true certainty, no true stability or predictability or static okay state in our life that will ever last. Instead, we find ourselves forever vacillating between states of pleasure, discomfort, or somewhere in between. And this is what Chodron calls the fundamental ambiguity of being human. This sense of not being able to get any ground under our feet that persists, that doesn't go away. And so instead we experience this edginess, this uneasiness that we can sense in our thinking and in our bodies. And that's what was happening to me last week. I really believe it. It was just this fundamental ambiguity, uncertainty, being human. And what just occurred to me right this moment is, and I was on vacation where my regular routine wasn't in place, right? So there was a reason for that to pop up for me because in my normal life, I have a routine that gives me maybe a little bit more of that sense. But you throw me into, a week or more of not a routine, and that came up for me. Chodron goes on to say that it is not the ambiguity or groundlessness or impermanence itself that causes our suffering, or to use the terms I'm using today, anxiety. Rather, it's our resistance and denial of the reality of this groundlessness, impermanence, or ambiguity that results in our dis-ease and our discomfort. So it's not the fact that there's no ground itself that causes us the discomfort. It's that we resist it. We don't want it to be so. We want to somehow fix it, make it go away. She says our discomfort arises from all our efforts to put ground under our feet and to realize our dream of constant okayness. When we resist this fundamental ambiguity, it's called suffering. But when we can completely let go and not struggle against it, when we can embrace the groundlessness of our situation, that's called enlightenment. So it's a bit of a paradox. Many of us seek the place of constant okayness, thinking that once we finally get there, we can relax and let go. But in fact, we need to relax and let go here and now. before we get to any particular place. The groundlessness will never go away. It's a natural part of being human. And what popped up to me as I was thinking about this as well is, I'm sure many, many teachers say this, but for me, the first person I heard this from was John Kabat-Zinn, and he said, "This is it," right? You can put your emphasis on whatever word in that 3-word sentence you want, but this is it, not some future state. You know, this is where we're living. This is our lived experience right now. And it has a lot of uncertainty in it. That's just a fact. But the teaching says if we relax into it, it's not so bad, you know, that we can live with it. So I see a lot of heads nodding. So I'm thinking this resonates. Does anybody have comments or questions or experiences they want to share about this ambiguity and how you experience it?
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's wait for a mic. What was up here?
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard the wrong voice. I'm sorry.
Definitely, can everyone hear me? Definitely resonates very well with this. A lot of uncertainty in the world, job-related, economy-related. I'm an immigrant too, so there are some situations from the government. So definitely resonates. But this is where, and so as much as you try to accept it's the uncertainty, the instability, you cannot know everything. One thing came to my mind. I haven't fully practiced or understood the Zen peacekeepers. Still I'm relatively new, but this phrase "practice not knowing" came up, and like I kept telling myself that you're just never gonna know, you're never gonna figure out. But it's just this mind is so restless. We've been trained to solve problems and figure out solutions. It just never lets go. It's like you say all that and then you become present for a period of time. Then before you know it, you're already lost again, trying to figure out. And it's just constant loops. Definitely. So somewhere I read, the defilements like anger or ill will or hatred or jealousy, probably they're easier to manage even. Like it's very acute, you know where it's coming from, you could, relatively speaking, still they're hard too. But this constant churn of restlessness and worrying probably seems like the most difficult one, just from my experience. So just that reflection.
Yeah, I appreciate that reflection, yeah. Mark has something, okay.
No, this way back to you, Stu.
Thank you, Donna.
Before I begin, I just want to say that your very start, you could have just stopped there. Just the presence of this group, just being here, you're absolutely right. And it does very much what now in the body of your talk you're talking about for me. But to get really personal, I've gone through in the past, off and on for the past 6 months, depression. Not the kind of depression where I have to take pills, but I just can't get myself to turn around sometimes. And I ask myself, what the F is going on? Why? And it doesn't feel like anxiety, but I'm certain there is a kind of anxiety that's underneath it. And I imagine some of you also resonate with the way I'm viewing it. It's not necessarily anxiety, but it's there, depressing you. That's how I feel, depressed down. And to rise up, and for me, so much of it has to do with what's going on in our country. I really appreciate the honesty of your statement. If I were an immigrant, I would be scared to death. I would be really frightened constantly, even if I was totally legal. But I'm a very lucky guy. I'm a white male citizen of this United States, and I still feel really scared. And I realized that my depression is around a lot of that. And that is suffering, without question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess building on that, I feel like I've been thinking a lot and meditating a lot on like the concept of fair. You know, like I think I spend a lot of time kind of indignant right now with the current state of things, with this idea that, well, this isn't fair. You know, I think part of what's so upsetting about it is it feels so stupid at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like, this is really like, you know, like I thought, I had a friend of mine that I went to his, he was undocumented for about 32 years, and he was a baby when he came here. And so he spent a long time, and I was very privileged to get to go to his swearing in. And when we went into the courtroom, it was at downtown, and it was this beautiful building, and it had this giant brass eagle that was like 7 feet by 7 feet on a big seal, and the ceilings were so tall, and there was wood paneling, and the judge came in and everyone rose, and it was this really like, you know, like you just felt the authority of this space and the kind of feeling. And then meanwhile, like our president is debating whether or not Tylenol causes autism, and the CDC is being gutted, and all of this stuff. And I'm like, this feels like such a mockery. Like, this isn't fair. Like, I can't even understand. Like, I have to swallow my rage, like, constantly, and just belly it. And then you think, you know, the Zen part of me, the not knowing part of me says, what is fair? You know, like, I feel like the human existence has been years and years of not knowing, you know, centuries, millennia of not knowing, of like leaving the cave and the fear that you're gonna get eaten by something, or whether you're gonna eat and feed yourself today, or whether you're gonna do it. And that not knowing is part of our life. That's part of what it means to be alive. And this idea that we're going to know all the time, or that this is the way it's supposed to be, or this is what we deserve, or, I mean, I'm not saying that any of this stuff is right, but I guess what is fair, you know?
Triggers a lot, doesn't it? I think all of us can identify with, you know, most of us can identify with some of the comments that are made here. You know, this uncertainty piece is really difficult. And it's here, whether we're in a tough current political state or not, right? It's this fundamental uncertainty, groundlessness that we have as humans, this not knowing state, as you just mentioned, has been with us since we came out of the caves. And yet it's still uncomfortable. Let me sort of wrap back here and say that Chodron says that one of the elements that arises in our efforts to create stability, predictability, or groundedness is through the development of a fixed identity. She's talking here about our tendency to hang on to particular positions or beliefs as a way of trying to neatly explain reality, rather than tolerating the fundamental underlying uncertainty and impermanence of our lives. We don't do this intentionally. We do this as a habitual response or reaction. She says that we cling to positions as our personal platform and become very dogmatic about it. Who, me? Right? It's reflected in statements such as that we believe about ourselves, too. I have a short fuse. I'm too caring sometimes. I'm a very organized person. I mean, of course, we need to have a sense of who we are and our beliefs and our values in order to operate in the world. But it's the rigid holding to particular views or ways of seeing that preclude our capacity for taking new points of view, or from seeing reality as it is and not as we have structured it in our own heads. You know, I'm bringing it from like sort of this big political reality comments that we've had down to the very individual, but see if you can make the bridge between the two. I have a fixed image of myself as being organized and on top of things. It's how I see myself. It creates enormous pressure for me at times, right? Unable to ask for help when I need it. Unable to give myself permission to remove something from my plate. But that's the view I have of myself, and it's my fixed identity. I think I have another example, hang on. I have another fixed image of myself as indecisive, which can definitely lead to anxiety. You know, and of course we don't just have a fixed identity about ourselves. Once we have our own fixed identity, then I naturally have a fixed identity, ideas about you too. Who you are, this is how so-and-so is. This is what so-and-so should do, right? All of this in service of trying to create a knowable world, something stable and predictable. Given our fixed identity and our desire to avoid the feeling of being groundless, we end up having to spend a lot of effort, as she says, to rearrange reality, because reality doesn't always conform to our view of what it should look like. And where did that come from? Where did our view come from? It came from layers and layers and layers and layers of conditioning. From our parents, from our schools, from our faith traditions, from the economic system we grew up in. We all get caught up in the conditioned world, and it can't not help but affect the way we view the world. And so we start distorting reality to make things fit into what is typically a much smaller worldview than is necessary or helpful in our lives. And not being able to make peace with the natural fluidity of ourselves, others, and experience. Rather than recognize the fluidity, we cling to our personal and worldviews and cause ourselves suffering. She says that often the first blow to our fixed identity is precipitated by some sort of crisis in our lives. When things start to fall apart in your life, you feel as if your whole world is crumbling. But actually, it may be your fixed identity that's crumbling. And Chogyam Rinpoche says that's cause for celebration. So she gives this example in her own life. Let me see if so she's the abbess of Gampo Abbey, and she said, I thought of myself as a likable, flexible, open-hearted, open-minded person. Part of that was true, but there was another part that wasn't. For one thing, I was a terrible director. The other residents felt disempowered by me. They pointed out my shortcomings, but I couldn't hear what they were saying because my fixed identity was so strong. I got the same kind of negative feedback, but still I didn't hear it. This went on for a few years. Then one day, as if they had all gotten together and staged an intervention, I finally heard what everyone had been telling me about how my behavior was affecting them. At last, the message got through. That's what it means to be in resistance or denial. You can't hear anything that doesn't fit into your fixed identity. You can't take it in unless it's already part of your self-definition. So being attached to our fixed identity in Buddhism is called ego clinging, the effort to put ground under our feet in a never-shifting world, trying to get some certainty. She says that our fixed identity is false security. We maintain it by filtering all our experience through it, through that conditioning that I just mentioned. She goes on to say, when we like someone, she says it's because they make us feel good. They confirm our fixed identity. They don't blow our trip, she says. And when we don't like someone, it's at least in part because in some way they challenge our fixed identity of who we are. We're uncomfortable in their presence because they don't confirm us. She calls these people our greatest teachers because they help point out to us where we're stuck. She thinks of this attachment to our fixed identity as being hooked. It's a stuck feeling, a closing down, a withdrawing when we're uncomfortable. It's also the urge to find relief from those feelings and to find something that gives us comfort, pleasure, or relief. The visceral experience of this is what we're talking about as the fundamental ambiguity. When we get into that feeling, like when I was laying in bed in the hotel and not being able to sleep and feeling this and reaching for something that I could tag it to, that's kind of our default strategy. You know, we each have our own default strategies for how we try to get to a more comfortable place. Our default strategy might be working too much, phone scrolling, binging TV shows, too much shopping, eating, drinking. Our default behaviors can even be things like being critical, unkind, getting too busy or getting too lazy, mindlessly analyzing and reanalyzing. In our introductory class here at the Zen Center about mindfulness, we talk about these strategies as like we're in a river, and when we're not balanced, when we're not calibrated, when we're feeling that edginess and not comfortable with it, we hit one of the banks, and one bank is ice, we withdraw, and the other bank is fire, we act out. So those are the two primary categories in the way that we try to get ourselves out of this discomfort. She calls them exit strategies. Our attempts to make things right, to get rid of our anxiety, anger, and sense of vulnerability. And they typically work for a while, until they don't. But they don't fundamentally change the dis-ease that we're trying so desperately to get away from. Think about your own exit strategies for a moment. You know, I mean, mine getting busy, overcommitting, not allowing myself rest. I can't allow myself rest because then all of this stuff would come up, right? Another one of mine used to be analyzing, interpreting, reanalyzing, just doubling down on trying to figure things out. And I've loosened up a little bit on this one, primarily by practicing not knowing. You know, to recognize when I'm getting in that state of trying to figure something out, thinking that my brain, my mind can figure it out, and just going into not knowing. But when I think back at that, it astonishes me is how much comfort I got in engaging in this behavior that actually kept me stuck. You know? And of course, there are sometimes healthy ways of dealing with this discomfort. Exercise, meditating. I kind of think about it as the intent behind the behavior. Am I trying to change something, avoid it? Or is my behavior, like meditating, a way of being with whatever that tightness or tenseness is? That can be useful for us. So, how can we deal with this fundamental ambiguity or uncertainty of being human? You know, what do we do with this discomfort instead of exiting? How do we learn to embrace this fact of life? She says there's no easy steps, but she does provide some general guidance. She says, begin noticing when you're uneasy, from slight edginess to sheer terror, from slight irritation to full outrage. Begin noticing when you're on the verge of using an exit strategy or have already opened the carton of Haagen-Dazs or whatever your food of choice is. It's notice, 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 notice. And our meditation practice is essential here. Because what do we get from our meditation? We start building in the ability to pause and notice what our mind is doing. She calls these feelings of uneasiness the gateway to awakening. Do not try to get rid of them and do not use your exit strategies. If instead, quote, if instead of thinking of these feelings as bad, we could think of them as road signs or barometers that tell us we're in touch with the groundlessness, then we would see the feelings for what they really are, the gateway to liberation and open doorway to freedom from suffering, the path to our deepest well-being and joy. We have a choice. We can spend our life suffering because we can't relax with how things really are, or we can relax and embrace the open-endedness of the human situation, which is fresh, unfixed, and unbiased. The counterintuitive turn toward rather than resisting. And if you're like me, you hear this and then you say, but. The world's on fire. Takes a little energy. I can't just like chill out. And I don't think that's what this is saying at all. I think this is, this is saying settle your mind so that you can behave and act in a way that has discernment, that is a response rather than a reaction, that you're making deliberate, thoughtful, caring, loving, compassionate, empathic choices rather than operating out of your anger, rage, fear, anxiety. I think that's what this is really saying. Each time, she says, each time you begin to meditate, you can decide that you're going to see if you can let the thoughts go and be right here with the immediacy of your experience. Perhaps you can be right here for only 5 seconds today, but any progress in the direction of non-distraction is positive. Be fully present, feel your heart, and engage the next moment without an agenda. And that took me back to, in closing, I'll just say, another book that everybody knows we're big fans of here at the Zen Center, Training in Compassion by Norman Fisher. And we're in a class, those of us in Ango are in a class right now with Myogetsu on Training in Compassion. So it's very alive in my mind and heart again. And he says in here, the mind and heart react according to their well-worn habits. Whatever habit of mind you have now comes from your actions and thoughts in the past. Whatever habits of mind you will have in the future depend on what you do or don't do from now on. The way you spontaneously react in times of trouble is not fixed. Your mind, your heart can be trained. Once you have a single experience of reacting differently, you will be encouraged. Next time, it is more likely that you will take yourself in hand. Each time becomes easier than the last. When something difficult happens or anxiety arises from the uncertainty of being alive, you will train yourself to stop saying, damn, why did that have to happen? And begin saying, yes, of course, this is how it is. Doesn't that sound like Norman? Yes, this is how it is. Let me turn toward it. Let me practice with it. Let me go beyond entanglement to gratitude. So, sort of referencing what I just said earlier, the calmer you are, the clearer you think. Breathe. Let your decisions come from a place of peace, not reaction. So that's what I have today. And if anybody has comments, please share them. Yes, Adrian, Kelly will get you a microphone.
So much and so timely for what so many of us are going through. I had so many thoughts when you were talking, and one of them was a memory that came to mind when I was young and I lived by the lake. I was a an enthusiastic swimmer, and one of my favorite things to do was get in at North Avenue Beach and swim out beyond where you could touch and swim down to Oak Street Beach. And you can't, and that's not that far in long distance swimming, but for me it felt like, well, it was pretty good. And sometimes the waves were pretty high, you know, and you're not sure if you're going to actually make it down there, and there's the concrete breakwaters along part of the, you know, you don't want to get washed into the concrete breakwaters, you know, so it's got challenges, but it's that same thing from an athletic point of view. If you relax into the swimming and the knowledge that you're floating, then you're going to do it. If you start like, you know, kicking your legs too hard or flailing or tensing up and getting anxious, then there you are out in the water and you can't touch the bottom, and whoa, you know. So it just brought that to mind, like that experience.
Great metaphor.
It was an experience. But I also thought about, you know, you're talking about fixed views, and I'm studying precepts right now, and it's like precepts is not like a list of rules, right?
Right.
You have to bring it into yourself, and then it becomes flexible because it's all relational. It's not, well, you know, I always know this is the right way to not lie, or this is the right way to be generous, and that's more training in that way, and
It goes against our habitual reactions to the way we deal with our life.
oh yeah. Even if you were like born and bred in the Ten Commandments, it's like,
Yeah.
it's so enlarging. And then I'm sorry, I'm taking a lot of time. I was just so, the last thing is that, like, you know, I wake up in the night and I've learned to practice breathing, but Charlotte Joko Beck says, you know, you're meditating and the anxiety comes up. Separate yourself from the story. What's the story you're telling yourself, and what's the energy you're feeling? Like, are you just, you know, feel this energy? And sometimes I can do that, sometimes not. But that just came to mind when you were talking about that. So thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
Others up back here, Kathy.
Well, thank you so much for this talk. I mean, it resonated with a lot of things that I've been thinking about lately. And I also really appreciated how the gratitude you expressed for the community at the beginning of your talk. And, you know, the 3 tenets coming up, I feel like the 3 tenets to me and these different practices that we do are, the content of them is helpful, you know, not knowing, bearing witness. But what also is powerful for me is knowing that other people are practicing this too. Like, okay, I'm not the only one trying to practice not knowing here. And every time I sort of think about those practices, it's just a reminder that, you know, it's this community that extends, you know, far beyond even this room, you know, that, you know, we're in it together in some way.
That makes me take a nice deep breath. Thank you for sharing that. Reminding me of that. Yeah. Erica?
Oh yeah, over here.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was really wonderful, and so many timeless aspects connected to, you know, what we're experiencing today. I really appreciate that. When you were talking, one thing I thought about was when I was first practicing many years ago, I remember walking across campus, and you have to get across campus in a certain amount of time. And I would often feel this anxiety about, you know, trying to get to where I was going to. And then one time I thought, oh, I can still walk fast without feeling this anxiety. That's interesting. Right? Which is like, okay, well, just because I'm letting go of that fear and tension and anxiety doesn't mean I don't act in the world and I don't, do something when something arises, right? And I think that's something that took a while to realize, but sometimes you see these certain circumstances in life where it comes up and you can respond without that kind of feeling, and it is really transformative, because sometimes I feel like there's a cartoon with a dog at a desk with fire all around. And he's like, and it says, "It's fine." Right? And sometimes I feel like when I'm practicing, I'm like, "It's fine, it's fine." And it's not fine. And like, if the dog were practicing well, he would like say, "Oh, it's fine," and get up and go somewhere else, right? Without the fire, right? So it's like, okay, it can still be fine, and you can still act and do things and whatnot. So anyways, thank you so much for your talk. It was really...
Erica, I really appreciate you reinforcing that, because that's kind of what I was trying to get at, where I was saying that I don't think we're resigning. We're just trying to act from a better physical, mental, spiritual place. And that is so important. And the other thing that I wanted to say that I think is really important too is, there are times when anxiety or difficulties in our life, meditation isn't going to do it. I just think it's always useful to say that for anybody who's at a point where they need medical or professional therapy or, what other kinds of help to manage what's going on. That's got to be part of the formula too.
Yeah, over here.
Do we have time?
Yeah, oh yeah, we have like 12 minutes or so. Online will come to you too shortly.
12 minutes, oh, that's fine, I can use it. No. I've been talking to a bunch of people recently, both some interviews that I've been doing, but also other people I know who are practicing, and I hear the phrase, I'm looking for the Dharma, or I'm searching for the Dharma. And basically, I think what you're raising here, for me at any rate, and in what I describe for myself, is I realize this is the Dharma. This is life. And none of you, whatever you do, but I can't just say, I've got to change this. I can't. It's what it is. I may not like it, but it's what it is. And so in my own practice, not only have I come to recognize that, but I've also said, okay, but I can do something too for others, and that has been a change. So I have undertaken what Arthur Brooks talks about as his gratitude processes. I don't keep a gratitude journal, but I try to think of 3 things I'm grateful for every day, and I definitely thank someone. It doesn't have to be anybody important. Every day, like the checkout person at Starbucks or whatever.
Good practices for sure. I think that that's so important, and I try to remember that all the time too. I can get overwhelmed by the fact that I can't change the larger context, or what can I do in the little space that I have? It doesn't mean that I also don't participate in some kind of social activities or social activism, but every day in my own little sphere, I can soothe myself and hopefully soothe others. So, anybody online? I'm going to suggest that we wrap up early. Wouldn't that be exciting? We don't have to fill a whole hour. Oh, Earl, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say thank you for the fact that there is a Sangha, because the Sangha is so rewarding. The fact that we're all here together sharing our ideas and our thoughts. I mean, it reminded me of a time some years ago, I did something called the S training. And in that group, there were 300 or so people, and none of us knew one another, and we all had these issues, and people were sharing. And that was the first time I ever recognized that my problems were not mine alone, that other people had problems very much like mine, and that I wasn't peculiar. I wasn't this peculiar person in the world that had just this issue. Lots of people had that. And that so brought me together with people instead of feeling apart. I started to feel together as one of them. And that's been strengthened very much by Buddhist training, getting together, meditating, of course. But I think the what is it, the Sangha, the power of the Sangha, is to be together with people and recognize that our problems are they're not ours. They're all of ours.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Oh, Ellen.
Yes. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for today. I'm glad you changed the topic of your the conversation because it was perfect for what I needed today. I had engaged in an argument last night with someone, and I spent probably 90% of my meditation today trying to figure out how to solve it. So I guess that's my exit strategy, is looking for the solution, right? But it seemed okay because I was looking at the Zen solution, what would the Buddhist approach be to this? And I came up with, being curious and all these other wonderful things, but I completely skipped over the ambiguity. And thank you for reminding us to sit in that as a really powerful place before jumping into, for me, the solution.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good to be here.
Thank you. All right, online Sangha.
Thank you,
Have
Chris.
a lovely Sunday. Good to see
Wonderful.
you all. Those who are able to stay, please join us in the community room for snacks. Have a beautiful Sunday.
How are you? Good to see you. Good.